Hey everyone, subscribe if you haven't already done so. I'm trying to move my head so Adolf Hitler's name's not in shot, like there, because I've noticed he has been. Not ideal. But I was thinking about the concept album, and I have a favourite, which I'm going to talk mostly about, but I have one of those albums that is constantly called a concept album, but isn't a concept album, and then Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Paul McCartney's idea was for it to be a concept album, and Sgt. Pepper runs into it with A Little Help from My Friends as the first and second songs, and there's a reprise of Sgt. Pepper's at the end of the album. That's as far as the concept goes. Very hard to have a concept album when there's three separate songwriters working differently, with different ideas. Not ideal. Genesis had a proper concept album. The Lamb Lies Down in Broadway, Dies in Broadway. Anyway, it was Peter Gabriel's idea. Old Phil Collins and the boys weren't too keen on it, and it was the last album that Peter Gabriel would work with with Genesis. But there's loads of like kind of loosely connected ones. Kendrick Lamar's had one, Mad City. Dave Brubeck's album in the 50s is considered to be one because his idea was to have different time signatures with all the songs, which he did. Frank Sinatra has one. Marvin Gaye is an interesting one. Here My Dear is a concept album where so Marvin Gaye got married, was getting divorced, found out that his wife was going to take some of his money, and he decided to make an album that she could take the money from, which ironically would be called Here My Dear and would be a song about their divorce, which is pretty mean-spirited really. But that's particular. Green Day had one. American Idiot was considered a concept album. There's a lot of loosely based ones then as well, about people growing up in certain environments, and it doesn't quite link up as a concept album. Obviously The Who have a couple of concept albums. Tommy is one, Quadrophenia is one. But my very, very favourite concept album, and an album that's in my top 10 of all time, I was given a copy by my dearly departed friend Dara. His dad gave me a cassette of, do you remember them? They're coming back apparently, but it was a cassette of Pink Floyd's The Wall, and it was a double cassette because it's a double album. And I can't remember why he gave it to me. It would have been the first Pink Floyd stuff I had really heard. He gave me that and another album, and I can't remember. And there was two moments in my life that was very important. That like my mom's friend Monica gave me 4 Beatles records, and not the famous ones, but I think it was Rubber Soul, Beatles for Sale, and I got to listen to those, and kind of my love for the Beatles grew. But when I was given The Wall, I just thought it was a mad album. Like there's some straightforward rock pop songs, and then there's some weird little interludes, and there's some weird sound effects in the background. I didn't know it was a concept album, and then I followed it up because I really liked it. I remember seeing a documentary. I was trying to figure this out. Like, where did I see the documentary? Because I have an idea it was recorded onto a videotape, but where it was recorded from, I don't know. Maybe BBC had one of those nights where they do an album or an artist, and I was given this, the making of The Wall and the making of The Wall live, and I don't know the name of the thing. I'm sure it's very easy to find now, but it's such a good, detailed description of the album and the tour. So with the album, it's about the Roger Waters, the bass player, wrote the album, about 90% of the album, and it was his idea of like semi-autobiographical. So his childhood, his dad dying in World War II. The character Pink is the character within the album, but Roger Waters wrote it all. And then it goes through his childhood and like his relationship with his mother, and she's like overprotective and worried about him all the time because obviously she's lost her husband, and she doesn't want to like kind of lose her son. There's no mention of other people. And I just, while we're talking about that song Mother, I just want to play a little bit and just listen to the first chorus of it. I won't play the full song. I wouldn't do that to you, but okay. Mother, do you think they'll drop the bomb? Mother, do you think they'll like this song? Mother, do you think they'll try to break my balls? Ooh, mother, build a wall. So that's the first chorus, and it goes into the idea of isolation, and his mother wants to protect him. And at the end of the song, he sings, "Mother, did it need to be so high?" So the idea of the wall being impossible to get over, and then he would be isolated. And it came from the idea of Roger Waters in a gig in 1977 in Montreal, and he had a run-in with some of the audience members, and he spat at one of them, and he had this real guilt about it. But he went to talk to a psychiatrist, a friend who was a psychiatrist, and they gave him some muscle relaxants and stuff. So that sent him into a kind of a weird headspace, and he started coming up with this idea. Comfortably Numb is on this album, where he talks about the idea of coming off drugs, which is again in relation to that idea of being given those. He had taken a few drugs in his time, but he was in Pink Floyd, but these kind of different types of drugs. So it goes on, and this was actually made into a film with Bob Geldof in it. But as we go through it, he gets to the end of the first half of the album, and he has built the wall. And in the live concert, they decided to actually physically build a wall on stage. It's amazing if you look at some of the performances now of it. And Goodbye Cruel World is the last song on the first side, and he's completely isolated. And then as soon as he's isolated and he's fully intact, he realizes that this isn't what he wants, or this is too much. And then he starts to try and push out from it. And Hey You is on the following side. I think it's the first song on the following side. And there's Is There Anybody Out There, which is this weird kind of trippy sounding, out there. It's great. And it starts to go through. He starts to reminisce about World War II then, and then about like, does anybody here remember Vera Lynn? Talking about she was people know who Vera Lynn is, but she entertained the troops during World War II. And The Show Must Go On is another song. And then he starts to go through this inner phase, or almost psychosis of him becoming this leader, this fascist leader, like Adolf Hitler, I suppose. And you see it really well in the film, where Bob Geldof's got the long trench coat and stuff like that. But he talks about the as he's tripping on whatever he's on, the idea of like he's in front of the audience as not just or not a performer, but the idea of him being having power over the crowd. And I guess as like a pop or rock star, you kind of, in a way, you do, like you're able to get them to sing your lyrics, and you want them to bop up and down to their music, and some of them dress like and there is an element of like that kind of iconography, the power that a rock star has. But he takes it like one step further, and he has songs like Run Like Hell, In the Flesh, I think is In the Flesh on that one. But so it goes along, and there's the interludes I was talking about, these little phone calls and stuff, and he's got this, there's a song called Nobody Home, where this woman's in the apartment and she's talking to him and he's not responding, and like he talks about an axe. So he's really in this psychotic state. And then at the end, there's a song called The Trial. It's kind of a song, it's mental. It's really the most operatic moment of the album, where the school teacher who was in the start of the album comes back. His mother, there's a voice of his mother, there's a voice of a judge, and the audience then is getting involved, and like, Pink is guilty of all the crimes that he suspects he has committed. And it's this whole existential crisis from beginning to end. And the most famous song will be Comfortably Numb. Everybody will know. Another Brick in the Wall Part 2 would be the most famous song of it. But that's one of the early songs in the album, going through his school life when We Don't Need No Education. But like Comfortably Numb would be the big tune. And Mother is amazing song. It's one of my Hey You or Mother would be my favorite songs off the album. But it's just the perseverance to write and record and perform under strange circumstances, because the band were starting to kind of rub up against each other the wrong way. Roger Waters had taken over as the main man, the main songwriter, the singer, which Dave Gilmour had been the singer. I will say though, in Mother and Comfortably Numb, the use of the two voices is brilliant. What's it? The Dave Gilmour part, he sings the Mother part in Mother. And then it's hush, no baby, baby, don't you cry. Mama's gonna bet all of your nightmares. Oh, actually, that's what it is. Mama's gonna make all of your nightmares come true. Mama won't let anyone dirty get through. Mama's gonna hurt you under her wing. She won't let you fly, but she might let you sing. Mama's gonna make you healthy and clean. So, Mama's gonna make all your nightmares come true. Mama won't let anyone dirty get through. Mama's gonna keep you here right under her wing. She won't let you fly, but she might let you sing, which is great because I like the idea of, I don't know if this is actually what it is, but like the idea of he will sing because he becomes pink, but she won't let him fly because possibly then he could fly over that wall that she has built for him that's too high, like he says at the end. So I do love that. But that Dave Gilmour part, switching the vocal, he doesn't try and sing like, Roger Waters' Mother, but it's the swap of the vocal to something different because Roger Waters has been, singing a lot of the album. Dave Gilmour, interestingly though, sings Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, so that did become famous. But I find it so fascinating, and they performed it in many places across the world, obviously. But just recording the full album, and I have a live album that my dad got me because I went uptown with him. This was years and years ago, and I stood around this Pink Floyd album, which was one of those long ones that had the two CD here and here, so it was like, but it had a cool cover and all that. And I just stood around and I waited until maybe he noticed that I had it in my hand for ages, and he'd buy it for me, and he did. But it's amazing that like that's all they performed. They didn't perform anything off The Dark Side of the Moon or any of their metal or any of their early albums. Just recorded that, and the persistence and the determination to just be within that world. It's amazing that Roger Waters did it, but it's also amazing that the others hung in there. Richard Wright, who was one of the main Pink Floyd, the beginner, starters, you know what I'm trying to say, person who set up Pink Floyd, he was fired during the sessions, and then they rehired him as a working musician. So that's particularly cruel. And then of course some of it was based on Syd Barrett, who had left the band obviously years before that, but he had his own issues with mental health and a breakdown and walking out of the band and leaving and the paranoia, and they even mentioned him in a couple of songs. And they seem to always mention him in songs to me up to that point. So it's just a brilliant album, and I just wanted to have a chat about it basically and get it off my chest that it's one of my favorite albums of all time, and it's got so many pluses. And it's one of those ones where people talk about, well, maybe they could have cut a couple of off it, and maybe they could have, because there's a couple that are not as good as the rest of the songs. But I think I like it. It's like the White Album thing where Paul McCartney was asked about, should you have cut a couple of songs off the White Album, and he just said, listen, it's the White Album with the Beatles. And that's kind of the same thing when it goes for The Wall. It sold over 30 million copies, The Wall. It did all right. If you haven't listened to it, go and listen to it and try and find that documentary about the gigs and the making of the album. It's fascinating. But yeah, any concept albums that actually that you might put in the comment section, that would be nice. But subscribe if you haven't, and thanks for paying attention. All right, see you later. Bye.